Paranormal M invites you into a realm where the bizarre isn't just possible, it's waiting. Every story leads you further into mystery, drawing you deeper into the unknown. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Some things should never be watched alone. Sharing a strange encounter. Last night I responded to this thread and shared a strange encounter I had about 1995. The responses got me thinking that this sub might be interested in another encounter I had about 10 years earlier, in late 1985. Back in 1985, I was in the middle of a very nasty divorce with my first wife. Things had gone horribly sideways, spilled over into my job. Sparing all the nasty details, suffice to say, I had a breakdown of epic proportions. For weeks I couldn't function, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and when I did sleep, I was plagued with nightmares. Early one day I grabbed a few things and just began to drive. I had little money, and I was in a very dark place mentally. Although I had been raised Christian and grew up in a church, I was very far away from God and was living in a, sort of non-Christian life. As I drove, I was in a cloud. I could only see darkness, pain, and despair in my future. I could imagine no happiness, no joy, and no future. Suffice to say, I considered my life over at the age of 22. I drove north from Texas, found myself in Oklahoma City. There I turned eastward toward my childhood home of Tennessee. As I drove, my despair clouded my perception. I became more and more depressed. It really felt like I was driving myself straight into the gates of the abyss. Somewhere in eastern Oklahoma, I pulled in for fuel and a restroom break. As I resumed my journey, I noticed a man standing at the side of the interstate on a ramp looking for a ride. He was dressed rather peculiarly, especially for the weather at the time. He was wearing a long, Old West-style ranch slicker and an ivy cap, sometimes known as a flat cap or duckbill cap. One reason I noticed him was because, in my mind, his appearance bore a striking resemblance to the gyro captain from The Road Warrior with Mel Gibson that had come out a few years earlier. I didn't stop but continued my journey. Thought nothing more of it. Soon I was forced to stop again, as I suddenly needed to use the restroom very badly, which was almost unusual. I could and still do often drive for hundreds of miles without stopping. I completed my bathroom break, turned back toward Interstate 40. As I turned onto the on-ramp, my eyes were drawn to another hitchhiker. They were looking for a ride. Only it wasn't another hitchhiker, it was the very same person I had seen a short time earlier at my previous stop. I'm sure I did a double take on seeing him. For reasons that I didn't understand at the time, but have become clearer later in life, I pulled over and offered him a ride. He got in the car and thanked me for the lift. In a short time, he began to make what I first assumed was small talk. It was far from small talk. It was as though he could read my soul. He talked about life's heartache and troubles, and it soon became clear that he appeared to know more about me and my troubles than he should. He turned the subject to God and his many blessings. Now, nearly 40 years later, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he seemed to have just had the right words I needed to hear. It was, for lack of better words, miraculous. Miraculous the way he seemed to be able to speak to my soul and lift the burdens I felt were crushing my very spirit. He rode with me the rest of the afternoon. By the time we were approaching Little Rock, Arkansas, I felt like a new person. He promised me that everything would work out. He said I was just beginning on a new journey, and he assured me that there were good things in store for me in the future. It was late in the day as we entered Little Rock. I decided to get a motel for the night. I stopped at a convenience store to let him out of the car so he could continue on his way. Before exiting the car, he asked me if I could spare a little money for food. I told him that I never give money to strangers. That's because I couldn't know if it was just to be wasted on alcohol or drugs. I would, however, be happy to buy him some food. He graciously accepted my offer, turned to the parking lot and went to the store. All these years later, I can still remember exactly what I bought for him that evening. I purchased a package of bologna, a half-gallon of milk, and a loaf of bread. I also believe that I picked up some condiments as well as a candy bar for dessert, and after paying for the items, I exited the store and found him waiting by my car. I handed him the bag of food. I thanked him for making me feel better. He, in turn, thanked me for the ride and food. Got into the car and started it, placing the car in reverse. I looked around to be sure I wouldn't, hit him backing out, and couldn't see him anywhere. Because it had only been a moment since he walked toward the rear of my car, I was concerned that possibly he had tripped and fallen behind me. Didn't want to back over him. So I placed the car in park, got out to make sure he was clear. He was nowhere to be seen. Walked around the car, and then I walked around the only other car in the parking lot. Nothing. Went in the store, asked the cashier if he had seen where the gentleman in the long coat had gone to. He said he hadn't seen anyone in the last few minutes but me. I was confused. As a cashier should have had a clear view of the parking lot from the checkout counter, and walked back outside, walked out to the street corner, and looked in all four ways. There was no one to be seen. I walked around, looked behind the building. Nothing. I even got down on my knees and looked under my car as well as the other car in the parking lot. Also nothing. The man had disappeared, as though he was a ghost. There's no way, even if he had run, could he have gotten out of sight as fast as he did. The man, the bag of food, the jug of milk I had given him were gone, vanished without a trace, as though they never even existed. Finally, I gave up and went short way down the road and rented a motel for the night. I went in, took a shower, said a short prayer, and then for the first time in weeks I slept like a baby all night, peaceful and dreamless. The next morning I woke feeling refreshed and invigorated. The mental clouds were gone, the burden was lifted, and I felt like a completely new man. Continued my journey eastward with a new zest for life. Eventually I traveled to Michigan, then to Florida. That's where I met a woman slightly older than myself. After the divorce from my first wife was final, we were married and we were together for 34 years until she passed away. The man was right. Everything did work out. My wife and I had a good life. There were difficulties, and at times the road seemed sometimes rocky, but the good far outweighed the bad. I'm convinced the man that rode with me all those years ago was an angel. Often I've looked back at that dark day and wondered where I would be today if it were not for that man's intervention. Seeing what I was going through and where it was heading, I fully believe that I would have been in prison or even dead had he not been standing on the side of the road that day. It humbles me. It makes me wonder what God saw in me that he would send me an angel. Since that day, I've often thought of Hebrews 13:2. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. I know many won't believe me, my story, or even my conclusion. That's your prerogative. However, I shall always thank God for the angel that was sent my way the day back in 1985. Something strange at Crybaby Bridge, Alabama, U.S. So there's this old bridge, basically in the forest by some train tracks known to the locals as Crybaby Bridge. Unsure of the real name, though. After a few wrong turns, girlfriend was with me, After my phone died, I didn't know the area. Idiot me didn't bring a charger. I ended up on a narrow forest path, just looking for a way to turn around. It was around 2 a.m. or so. That's when I found an old unused bridge off to the left. And I swear I heard a woman crying. Thought I was hearing things, but the girlfriend definitely heard it too. Made me stay in the car. Stopped a bit after, but then we both saw deep into the forest a bit later a really pale lady in a dirty white dress. To be honest, she felt lost, and I really wanted to help her. Kind of like a trance or a pull. The girlfriend immediately basically wrestled me out of the driver's seat, threw it into reverse, got us the hell out of there. Said later that the incident felt and smelled like death, whatever that means. Made sure to make me never go around there at night again. So, on my own in the day, I went near where I thought around it was by memory, not the actual location, but the places near. Found out that place is known as Crybaby Bridge, and sometimes, around midnight, you can hear a woman crying, mourning over her lost child. Apparently, people have gone missing there before when they went out at night. According to a lot of people that lived around there, those that live in the very area would make sacrifices there to keep her away from their homes. No one went into detail about what kind of sacrifices, but I'm hoping it's just belongings or objects if it's true. Thing is, though, it's been a number of months since, but I still feel a pull to go there around midnight, like a really bad itch just out of reach. Not sure why. Maybe it's my curiosity or maybe it's something else. And still, I just can never get that event out of my head. I felt unbelievable for several days. Sober. Around Christmas and New Year's and winter solstice last year, I had an extraordinary state of mind or set of circumstances come over me. Started feeling different after I had an unusual premonition that randomly popped into my head. I'm not an astrophysicist, but it suddenly occurred to me that we don't exist in the universe. It's actually a biverse with two opposing sides. The side we call our universe is expanding, while the other side I call the antiverse is contracting. I got the feeling that there are things that take on other forms. Maybe spirit form, I don't know. And they mainly reside in the antiverse. There's more to it, but I'll leave it at that. Never heard of antiverse before, I just decided to Google it. Turns out, antiverse is the frontier of theoretical astrophysics explained almost exactly how I conceptualized it. But I thought in terms of size and mass expanding and contracting, where Google explained in terms of time moving forward and backwards. Within a couple of days, TV in my living room quarters at work started turning in on me like it was narrating each moment in the moment too perfectly, watching me reacting to me. For example, too much coincidental correlation between TV programming and what was going on around me in the moment. One example, TV was talking about spy or fry or air fryers that had been built into listening devices shortly before I went home for 2 weeks off. When I got home, I unwrapped a gift. It was a new air fryer. By the way, I already had an air fryer. I felt like I started interpreting everything with a different receiver or a different lens. It was like everything went from boring, low-quality black and white programming to ultra-high-def action-packed special effects. Everything looked the same. It was just the way I started perceiving differently that changed. There was another layer of reality, a normal surface layer, and a layer I started perceiving. It was like my world split into a parallel reality. A reality where sights and sounds obviously took on other meanings in addition to the simple surface world perception. I didn't discuss how I was feeling because I didn't want to sound like a crazy person, or worse, be discovered to be something different than a regular human, possibly captured and analyzed in bad ways. I started trying to rationalize what was happening, came up with a couple of possibilities. 1. My mind is playing tricks on me. Never ruled out the possibility, no matter how real everything seemed. I believe this is the most logical explanation that best fits reality, at least it has most people understanding it. Was I pickle-balling? I was making reality a serious pickle. That's because I started operating out of bounds beyond the standard realm of human consciousness, thus threatening the reality we're supposed to remain in. And I might possibly discovered, eventually pickled to be preserved for further analysis or achieved. Or I inadvertently triggered a response from beyond human comprehension to check me, discourage and threaten me to hinder my ability to operate out of the bounds. 3. I was being occupied by some type of spirit, good, evil, or extraterrestrial. Jesus, Holy Spirit, God, I didn't know. Still don't know. But it eventually progressed to more of a Jesus or Antichrist vibe feeling, like a catalyst for Armageddon. I'm not active in religion, but I don't believe humans are the pinnacle of intelligence throughout space and all dimensions, so I do believe in God. Not trying to preach or impose any beliefs here, though. 4. I'm a test subject for an active human experimentation program that seeks to advance consciousness, enhance tolerance to fear and pain, engineer enhanced qualities desired in not shoulders, but soldiers, remote control human programming, etc. By far the least likely. 5. I got profiled for targeted psyops. I've been feeling terrible for the genocide happening in another part of the world, and I pray. So I prayed to help stop the genocide. I got the impression God can feel everything. We were approaching God's tolerance for human suffering before God decides to end suffering by stepping in to reset the human race and start over from the beginning with a new version of human. Interesting. I prayed for a ceasefire to help people being subjected to genocidal conditions, is when I basically started experiencing the change in perception. I decided to go to Angel Fire for some snowboarding. I could take my fiancée because she would stop interrogating me trying to find out why something was different with me. I tried to tell her I just didn't get enough sleep, but she didn't accept that explanation. She was bugging me. You're not telling me something. You can tell what's going on. Are you screwing around on me? You're not where you did the other person come from. Getting in all my face about it, and the weird thing was is she couldn't give me a tangible reason why she was saying I was different. I couldn't tell her I might be Jesus or an alien or whatever, and she was getting really annoying. Eventually, we just didn't want to be around each other anymore. So me and my teenagers proceeded to drive the Black Armada to Angel Fire without her. Heavy names. The whole way I was getting, threat signals from signs, radios, music streaming, commercials, everything indicating hell for us if I didn't stop my progress to Angel Fire. As if me going to Angel Fire was a problem for whatever was opposing me. I perceived the opposing force as evil, and by the time we got the steakhouse for dinner, we planned on eating at everything. Seemed like we would be crucified at stakes at the steakhouse. So I asked the hostess if they had wood stakes there. The hostess's reaction squashed the crucifixion situation, but things soon pivoted to getting hacked up on chopping block in the restaurant. So I told the waiter I already know this place would cost me an arm and a leg. I finished the drive the following day. At the hotel restaurant, I was asked if I would mind being seated with another family. I'd been there several times in the past, and it's never happened. Once seated, I could see there was a couple with open tables. We could have been seated at the other family, and they could have been seated, so why were they already there waiting for a table? Didn't make sense to me. Neither did that sentence. So the man in the other family starts talking, and soon reveals he's a government agent, described his job as chasing shadows. He showed me a picture of himself aiming an assault rifle wearing SWAT-style gear. Whole thing was odd, but I just conversated and responded to a lot of questions like everything was normal. The first night in New Mexico, I felt something hold me down for a moment in my sleep. Second night, my son witnessed me jump out of my sleep and aggressively confront something he couldn't see, like I was about to attack it, saying something about Jehovah is with me. I actually remember that moment, and I suddenly woke up and thought the devil was real close to me. All I seen was a black shadow for a second. I was about to attack it when I regained full consciousness, and nothing was there. Next day, I shared a chairlift ride with the guy from the DOJ, and a weird dude who was acting like he had a lizard tongue. A lizard tongue. Repeatedly doing a slithering-like motion like a snake. It was like he was trying to gesture to me to show my tongue, too. Forgive me, but I don't know that word as anything other than in the plural form, meaning the thing that you grab steak with on a grill, so I'm a little bit at a loss here. Anyway, all music was a description of hell on earth. Whoa. Things got real weird. I actually thought there was a possibility I would have been levitated from the top of the mountain into a ship, and I waited about 15 minutes from that to happen. LOL. The third night, I experienced a brief moment of sleep paralysis. It's where my mouth came open and my head tilted back, and in a quick moment, I dreamt about leaving my body to catch up with the ship, and I felt a mild, painless, faint single pop sound come from my mouth. I zoomed way out beyond this world in an instant. It felt good, and after that, my state of mind started receding back to normal. It took a few days to feel my normal self again. However, I can still hear screams of agony in some songs I've heard countless times before, and never noticed the screams in the background before. At least before I had this paranormal experience. The first time I watched the news after returning home from Angel Fire, I was surprised to hear that there was a ceasefire. It was like my prayers were answered. Too bad it eventually failed, though. Yeah, they definitely did not cease fire. Well, whoever it was. Could be any of them, and I'd have the same opinion. Paranormal prank. I had 3 days of nothing to do but wait for the next phase of the project. We were near a reputed haunted graveyard. Me and a coworker decided to check it out one night. Couldn't find it. Went to a nearby gas station to get 2 bags of beaver nuggets. Excuse me. 2 bags of beaver nuggets. Okay. And asked the clerk if she knew where the cemetery was and the directions to get there. Beaver nuggets. When we asked her eyes, just lit up. She told us a story about going there. She really believed the place was haunted. We went at 3 a.m. It was spooky looking, but we didn't see any ghosts or paranormal activity. When we looked at a picture, my coworker just sort of took me within the frame, and I wasn't in the picture at all. You could see there were lights from the flash reflecting off my high-vis reflecting straps on my coveralls floating in the graveyard. It looked paranormal if you didn't know what it was. 3 days later, back to the same gas station. But this time we got dressed out like paranormal investigators to prank the clerk. The company we were subcontracting had a logo that had 3 big letters, SSO. So we put SSO magnetic decals on the doors of the truck. Then we made badges showing the same logo with their pictures and barcodes, and the badges said Spirit Search Operations. The badges were laminated and looked legit. We pulled up, parked in the spot where she would clearly see the SSO logo on the vehicle. We approached the clerk, acting like we thought it was still the same night we saw when we were asking her for directions. I told her the graveyard was spooky, showed her the picture with the strange lights that showed up the picture but weren't visible with the eye. She was fascinated by the lights in the picture, thinking they must be spirits or ghosts. Then I asked if I had just left one of the 2 bags of beaver nuggets we had purchased on the counter an hour earlier. That's when she gave us directions to the cemetery. That's when she informed us that we were never there earlier that night. I said, come on, we were just here like an hour ago. We bought beaver nuggets, and you gave us directions to the cemetery, going on to explain that we went to the cemetery, came back. She acknowledged that she remembered that, but it was 3 nights ago. Me and my coworker acted very confused, checked the dates on the phone, acted like we just realized we lost 3 days' time. We displayed our Spirit Search Operations badges and introduced ourselves to inform her that we were in the area investigating paranormal activities, then apologized for the confusion, going on to explain it appeared we discovered a time vortex. We said sorry for the trouble, ma'am, knowing it was time for another coworker at work site to call us precisely at 4 a.m. The phone rang right on cue. I asked the call on speakerphone close enough to the clerk to hear it. Our coworker Josh started speaking loudly. He was sounding agitated. What's going on with you? Is James still with you? Your phones have been going straight to voicemail for 3 days. Are you still investigating Site 42 Block 4? We then informed Josh about the time vortex, and we're missing 3 days. Before leaving, we apologized to the clerk again, explained the areas. My computer glitched, and explained the areas going to encountered elevated investigation priority status. We told her not to be alarmed if men in suits show up requesting to get a statement from her to help them verify her timeline and version of events. We also reassured her that she was in no trouble, and she didn't have anything to worry about. Just be honest with any investigators asking questions about the time vortex incident. And now I go to Google to type in BEAVR-NUGGETS. Beaver nuggets, what is it? Beaver nuggets. Everything you need to know about Buckabee's beaver nuggets. Hold on, bear with me. There's a gas station in Texas, and it's a perfect place to stop and refuel on your next road trip. There are signature, sparkling, clean bathrooms, huge selection of snacks, grocery items, and traveler essentials, and friendly services make Buc-ee's a coveted pit stop for Texan travelers. Okay. Buckabee's beaver nuggets. Tell me what it is. What are Buc-ee's beaver nuggets? Almost everyone new to Buc-ee's has the question, what are beaver nuggets? Or what are beaver nuggets made of? Beaver nuggets from Buc-ee's are a unique snack that's sure to tantalize your taste buds. These crunchy little morsels of goodness are made from baked golden brown bits of puffed corn, coated with brown sugar caramel covering. The irregular shaped corners and edges make them totally different from conventional chips and other snacks. Buc-ee's beaver nuggets have an unforgettable sweet and salty flavor, making them a favorite amongst adults and children alike. They're named after the gas station's mascot, the beaver. The Buc-ee nuggets are a Texas road trip staple. Alrighty then. Sorry about that. I really needed to know. A weird card game called Par 30. A few years ago, I had a vivid dream I was playing a card game. I'd never heard of it in real life. When I woke up, I remembered how the card game was played, and that's weird. The game is called Par 30, and the description below provides details how to play it. You can play with 2 people, but it's better with 3 or 6 players per deck of cards. The card values are identical to blackjack. Aces are 1 or 11, player's choice. Face cards 10. The numerical values for all the other cards. Jokers are zeros in my dream, but can be tailored at will as long as the players all agreed to the rules. For example, leave 1 joker in the deck as a wild card or a high-value bust card. The object of the game is to have a 5-card hand as close to 30 as possible. Each player is dealt 5 cards. Player S takes turns exchanging 0 to all 5 cards from their hand with the remaining cards in the deck. Next, there's a player trading round. It's where players take turns trading cards amongst each other. Agreed upon trades may be 1 to 5 card trades. A player may force a trade on another player up to 2 cards. Each player gets an opportunity to trade. A player may elect to pass on the opportunity to initiate a trade, and if a player who has passed their option to trade gets a trade forced on them, they get another opportunity to initiate a trade. There can only be 1 trade involving the same 2 players per round. Each player may only initiate 1 trade per round. At the end of the player trading round, the scores are tallied for the round. Each player's scores, the difference from 30 above or below the same. For example, player 1's cards tally up to 33, so that player's score is 3 for that round. Player 2's score is 27, that player's score is also 3. Player 3's hand tally is 30 for a score of 0. The game can, however, be as many rounds the player agrees to. The lowest score wins the game. If the score is tied, a playoff round or rounds is played. To play with money, the first place collects the difference in the final score, dollar per point, from 3rd place on down. Second place loses no money, makes no money either. Of course, you're free to tweak the rules, at least some, as long as the rules are set before the game starts and all players agree to a uniform set of rules. When I had my dream, the last player was unable to pay the first player. But the first place player had a psychotic cat maul. What is happening? Had a psychotic cat maul the last place placer's head on command. It was weird. What is happening? First the beaver nuggets, then this. Got a verified phone call from someone sitting right next to me, and she didn't call me. Okay, so I need to know if anybody has experienced anything like this, or if this was something paranormal or just super techy and creepy. I was sitting in the car with my dad's girlfriend, and out of nowhere my phone lights up and it says that she's calling me. She's literally right next to me, not touching her phone. I show her and she's like, "I'm not calling you." So she checks her phone. There's no outgoing call on her end, nothing on her call log, and she never called me. So I answered the call, and all I hear is a loud fan-like mechanical noise on the other end, and our voice starts echoing back at us. I instantly felt this intense dread and fear, so I hung up after about 19 seconds. Now here's the kicker. The call was carrier verified. You know that little checkmark iPhone show when a call is confirmed to have come from a real number? Well, yeah, it had that. So the carrier verified that the call came from her actual SIM card. But she absolutely did not make the call. She was sitting right there. Her phone wasn't in use. And again, it's not in her call log at all. I was on LTE, not Wi-Fi, no FaceTime, no internet, ChatGPT, great source I know, said it isn't possible to spoof a number and still get a carrier checkmark. especially without her phone initiating anything. If it was spiritual, why did quote-unquote they say anything to me? What could this mean? I mean, I'm a pretty big skeptic, but this situation shook me up. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out what the hell this was. Was it some kind of energetic paranormal interference and some next-level surveillance thing? Has anyone here had spirits contact them through calls like this? Any insights from people who know about tech or spirits would be appreciated. Just now realizing I may have anxiety and trauma from paranormal experiences. Is that possible? Oh yeah. From 0 to 6 years old, I lived in a house that was haunted. I'm talking so haunted that anybody who spent just one night there experienced something, or at a minimum felt something was off. I have very few memories of living there, but a majority of them are memories of paranormal experiences or being terrified, but not really remembering why. The most clear ones to me are toys activating on their own, and an instance where somebody pushed me down the stairs when no one was around. However, my mom told me some stories of things that happened in the house. For instance, she said that while she was pregnant with me, something tried to push her. When I was a baby, she swears on everything she saw something try to wrap a balloon string around my neck. Both my mom and sister have said they were pushed, but it was only whenever they were holding me. What I'm trying to get at is that I think whatever's in the house had it out for me. Everyone in my family had tons of paranormal experiences, but the violent ones always had me as a target. I don't have any idea why, but that's not what this post is really about anyway. Now I'm 19 and starting to realize that living in that house may have affected me mentally. Up until 9th grade, I could not lay on my bed or go to sleep at night without my head completely under the covers and not having a single crack in the blanket. There was always just this overwhelming feeling of fear that I would see something or something would grab me. I'm now able to go to sleep with my head out of the covers, but even still, sometimes I'll be hit with paranoia, have to hide under the blankets until I calm down. Still can't walk through darkness without that feeling that something is there, even though I know I'm safe. I also can't stand having my closet door open or being near an open door in the dark, dim lighting. These feelings are also somewhat prevalent even in daytime, but they're most debilitating at night. Does anyone else struggle with this? I talked to somebody about it, but I fear saying that I have anxiety because I was tormented by a spirit as a child would make me look crazy. I think I followed one into the woods. The other night around midnight, my mother-in-law, who lives on the opposite end of the adjoined 1-acre plot of land as my wife and I, called my wife, telling her she was hearing a loud wailing sound out back of their house past the tree line. We live in the mountains at the base of a forest. My wife got my attention and told me to come to the window. That's where we listened for about 10 minutes. There was a very loud feminine wailing coming from the woods. It was something that sounded like a fox or a coyote makes, but each wail was much longer, louder, and more human. I've since looked up every wild animal in my area and have yet to match the sound I heard in one of them. Right around the time I thought to record the sound, it stopped. I've listened to the recording a few times to see if maybe I caught a glimpse of the sounds it was making, but I don't think I caught it. In the recording, though, my mother-in-law talks about how she first heard the sound, she turned the back porch on and walked outside. She has 2 German shepherds. They'll bark at, well, just about anything. Spend the majority of their time outside laying in the yard. Neither of them made a sound, nor did either of them want to go outside with her. She said she went outside, clapped her hands, and tried to scare it away. And after a little bit, she saw what she said was a small gray cat, looking to be about a domestic size. Walked up to the far side of the creek that separates the backyard from the woods, but didn't move any closer. Then proceeded to go up the hill into the woods. She said it felt like it was trying to lead her somewhere. She, being an animal lover, like my wife, said she was worried that there was an animal trapped or hurt, and like some video from the dodo, she was going to go into the woods and find some helpless animal to nurse back to health. Being of sound mind, she called us to tell us this and said that she was afraid to go out there by herself, and asked if I'd be willing to bring a gun to protect us in case there's a coyote or something else once we got up there. At the sound of gun and woods and afraid, I was all ears. Grabbed my plate carrier, a couple of knives, my pistol, shotgun, my Milwaukee chest-mounted bar light, and a small hand torch. Overkill much. My mother-in-law met my wife. We met in the backyard and told them to drive up to the side road and see if they could position the car to shine a light into the woods. I said I would walk across the back of their property and go into the woods from there, so as not to wake up my father-in-law or alert the dogs. I made my way over and approached the woods from the right side of the property. And just so you understand, the left side of the property is flanked by a long fence that stretches about 2 acres in length. It goes back deep into the woods, separating our property from our neighbors. On the right side of the property is flanked by a small road that leads us a few more houses maybe. It's set far back behind ours. I walked over a small bridge, and that covers a stream separating the backyard from the woods and this walker diagonally toward the fence line. As soon as I stepped foot into the woods, I spotted something reflective. It was just in front of the fence. I'd yet to pull out any light, so I turned on my hand torch and aimed it at the reflection. I walked a bit closer, and the light didn't move, so I imagined it was just a bit of the fence catching the light. Once I was about 20 paces away from it, I saw that there was a small gray blob, roughly ovular shape and covered in fur. Oval. Not ovular. My first and only thought was raccoon. That was because in that split second it added up. I then panned my flashlight to the right about 10 feet away, landed on a set of eyes. And what I had seen before just had been this raccoon, but what I saw after that was something else. This thing was a little bigger than a coyote. It had gray fur, and honestly I can't recall if it had a tail or ears or anything else. It was both canine and feline in characteristics, leaning more toward canine in appearance. It stared into the light at me for a few moments. Then it started walking slowly deeper into the woods. As far as I know, coyotes and foxes alike would be out there as soon as they smell me or hear me or take one step into the woods. Stranger still, this thing was not 10 feet away from this quote-unquote raccoon. They seemed to be perfectly content. I swept the light back to the raccoon as it moved behind a large pile of rocks toward the fence. Thought it must have a burrow or something. I panned back toward the creature, and it had moved very far, deeper into the woods. Can't recall seeing it actually move. Can't recall seeing its rear end. I just looked up into the woods toward a crest at the top of the hill and saw its eyes again staring at me. I'm not one to just waltz through the woods in the middle of the night, and in fact, if I was asked to just go into the woods at night armed the way I was, probably would have been freaked out even if there wasn't anything out there. But strangely, I was completely calm. As soon as I met its gaze, I turned on my chest-mounted floodlight, started making my way toward it. I walked probably 100 feet deeper into the woods. It still hadn't moved, and I kept walking until I saw my neighbor's house. The stretch of woods between their house and the fence narrowed out between the two where a hill sat. The quote-unquote creature had been at the top of the hill just barely over the crest when I hear crunching far off behind me at the base of the woods. It was my wife and mother-in-law. I looked back and saw their flashlights. When I turned back to look at the eyes again, they had just disappeared beyond the crest of the hill. I kept walking until I had a realization that I must have passed her property line. Pulled out my phone, called my wife, and asked her why it ended. She told me there's a line of small red flags from where we installed our electric fence last summer. I looked all around and couldn't see any, and keeping my eyes toward the hill, I started walking backward toward our property. I'd walked back maybe 100 feet before I saw the line of small flags. Once there, I turned and made my way back down the hill, met them at the base of the woods, and showed them where I'd seen the two animals. We made our way back down the yard and just barely made it into the back porch when another wail was let out, and this time it was different. It was similar, but it was a deeper pitch and had come from the direction of the creature that I followed. From the moment I pressed record to the moment I left the woods, not a single sound was made. It was completely silent, and that whole time I felt no fear, just an urge to follow it. It was just pure curiosity. Now, when I think back on it, it makes me kind of nauseous. Listening to the recording from the other night makes me nauseous too. I'm not sure what to think. Maybe you guys can shed some light. Those were not humans. When I was 13 years old, I went camping with my school. When I arrived, I noticed the camping spot was just some tents in the dark in a creepy forest. The tents were small, and we held a share with the tent with 12 others. I liked the activities we did, and we built a boat, we played football, and we roasted marshmallows around a campfire. When it was time for sleeping, I chose the bed all the way in the back. I opened my suitcase and realized I didn't bring my pajamas. I slept with my normal clothes on for the next 3 or 4 hours. That was until I was woken up by a loud rumbling noise. I turned around and saw 2 tall creatures hunched over in my suitcase. Were they searching for something, I thought? I reached for my arm out just to see whoever this quote-unquote person was, and I felt something harsh. If I were to describe it, I would say it felt something like old wood. After I touched it, I asked who it was, and I somehow fell back asleep. In the morning, I was woken up by my alarm on my phone. We're not allowed to bring a phone, so I was sure I'd turned my alarm off before sleeping. How could this have happened? I asked myself. I know it wasn't the other kids. I'd not even told them I had my phone with me, neither did I know them that really well, and they didn't seem like jokesters to me. My alarm woke up most of the kids in the tent. They asked whose it was and just acted like I was sleeping to avoid being suspect. I had to wake up around this time anyway, so I jumped out of my bed and I walked outside. It was really cold and I really had to pee. I walked around the tent and I peed in the bushes. I turned around and I saw a dead rabbit right outside where I slept. I called the teacher and told me it must have been killed by something. He said he would call the staff to clean it up. This day was not really that interesting. I mostly just laid in bed eating candy and thinking about what happened that night. It quickly turned dark and we roasted some marshmallows and we ate some pasta. Pasta was cold and stale, but I was hungry, so I didn't care that much. 1 hour later, it was almost bedtime. The teacher had told me if I wanted to go to the bathroom at night, I'd have to go in a duo because the forest is very dangerous at night. Didn't really think much of it, but I chose my duo just to be sure. Then it was bedtime. Made my bed, I fell asleep. Again, I was woken up, but this time not by weird creatures, but by my urge to pee. Tried waking up my duo, but he didn't wake up. I decided to go alone. I walked all the way to the front of the tent, walking some up the process, or rather, waking some of the process. And I walked out, and it was cold and really dark. I could barely see. I looked over the benches, and there it was again, looking at me. It was so tall, and it seemed to have something in its hands. It looked like an animal. I was stood still, looking at it for maybe 20 seconds until I decided to continue walking to the toilets. I opened the toilet door. I took a piss, washed my hands, and then I left. When I returned, I looked at the benches again. The creature was gone. Was it haunting me specifically? No one else had seen it, only me. If anybody knows what this could have been, please tell me. White Holloway Girl. This happened back when I was 13. Me, my mom, my sister, and brother decided to go on vacation to Morocco. At first, we wanted to rent an apartment for ourselves, but my grandma, who lives there, invited us to stay at her 70-year-old home. Me and my siblings hesitated because we heard about the stories that happened in that home, like faint voices and things like footsteps, etc. My mom changed her mind and brushed the stories off. She claimed that they were lies to scare us. We told her if we experienced something creepy, we would immediately leave the house and stay at her aunt's house. But for now, the vacation had basically started. We went to the bench nearly daily. We went shopping, bought a lot of souvenirs, and we chilled at the house. One night we tried to sleep, but it was just way too hot. Temperatures were like 30 or 40 degrees Celsius. We decided to sleep on the roof, and it's not really a roof, it's an open roof or open room at the top of the house. We cleaned the first floor and laid down the mattresses and blankets. My brother fell asleep first, then my sister, and at last, myself. I slept quite well for a couple of hours. There was a light breeze and it was quiet, until the silence was broken by someone calling my name. It was a soft and soothing voice. I slowly opened my eyes and stood up to walk to the door, and at first I answered with a yes, who's calling my name. There was no reply, and then I walked to the stairs and leaned over the railing to look down. What I saw, I have never told anyone. I looked down and saw a girl in a white dress looking back up. Her neck was looking so far up it looked inhuman. Then the girl just turned around and walked away until I couldn't see her anymore. I decided to shut up and just try to get some sleep. I couldn't. I don't know who that was, and I was starting to believe in the rumors about this home. Recently, my grandma told me about a 12-year-old girl that had committed suicide by jumping off the roof we were sleeping on. Some weird things happened and ghost stuff happening at my house. So I'm going to start off as a ghost girl I've been dealing with, like black sweatpants, black hoodie, face encased in darkness. I can see their face. I would occasionally hear my name being called. It sounded like my mother, sometimes my sister. Now it's unique and soft. She seems to be younger, around 20 maybe. I'd wake up with scratches on my back that would last for weeks, like somebody was hugging me. As time passed, I had a dream. I was sitting on the edge of my bed and she walked in insisting on being held. It felt familiar, normal even. I woke up and ever since then I stopped getting scratches. This is when my name being called started being unique and in a sort of soft tone. She always sounds scared and concerned. Saw her in the room next to me for a second. A day later I heard my name called in that room, unique and soft. The encounters are being slowly more frequent. There was a time years ago I was playing late and I heard my mother call my name. Turned around, but she wasn't there. She would be sleeping. Looked back at the TV, and there was a little girl, 12 maybe. They were in the window, just right at my TV in the peripheral vision. Went to look at her, spooking her. She dashed into a blind spot and disappeared. Haven't seen her since. Long black hair, pale face. And as I noted, I live next to the graveyard, and another small I can take a decent walk to. There's also a timer where there's a creepy fog around only my house. Ice-cold fingers moving my foot to open my legs. Never thought I would say this in my life. First of all, I'm not on drugs or mentally ill. I have been having an entity or a ghost, whatever it might be, bothering me, and it has been sexually bothering me. At first, it started with a nice cold hand touching and rubbing my foot and legs. Started to have intense sexual feelings, and the first time it happened is when I'm in this dream state, almost half awake and asleep. I'm not totally sure what had happened. Well, it's confirmed I've been raped by a ghost. First, it was happening in my dream state, so I wasn't really sure. Well, I'm sure, as it's now sexually bothered me while I'm awake. I felt ice-cold fingers grabbing my feet and moving my leg, and it appears to be going down on me, and when I felt a dick enter me. Excuse you, ma'am. The other day, the sexual energy was so exciting I had a wet dream or a whack. This is full of terminology foreign to me. I had a wet dream or a whack, or a wet awake, I guess. Then it got all excited and the energy was intense and it was moving my bed and this thing had been pretending to be my dead cat, Gary. Alrighty then. I've had my cat visit me and thought it wasn't my cat cuddling up next to me every day, and it even purrs. It changes shape from being up against my half of my body like the size of a man to the size of a cat. Well, it's not my cat cuddling. My cat would not sexually touch me, no way. It now has settled down, laying next to me, and it acts like my cat purrs and cuddles. While I ignore it, it gives me a vibration, and then a small push up against me, and when I first felt it, I felt love from it and no bad feelings. Pure love. So I have not been afraid of it. It's by my side every day now for about a year. Thought of it as my cat, and I show it love now, and, well, now that I know it's not my cat, I asked and demanded for it to leave, but it won't. Sometimes it starts shaking the bed and vibrating next to me. I have to yell at it and tell it to stop, or it'll try and get me in the mood and touch me. I tell it no, it stops for a bit and tries again, and the energy has been so intense from it that it's annoying me and makes me feel yuck. My tummy hurts, and I'm itching from the energy. I'm not afraid of it freaks me out, though. That's opposite. I guess I'm going to have to call on my higher power for help. I have too many comments. Paranormal warning while driving. So this one happened a couple of years ago, but only just really stumbled upon this sub. About 5 or 6 years ago, I'm driving abroad with my sister on vacation, and I've always had a bit of a lead foot. I was definitely pushing the car since it was a switchback road, and after modifying it recently went back. And then I was keen to see what it could do. After a couple of kilometers, both me and my sister just smelled a horrible burning-like smell. Instantly pulled over, checked all over, nothing seemed overheated or smoking. Decided to take it easy further down the hill and back to the holiday home. Not that weird so far. We're both hanging out watching TV in my room. Still couldn't shake that horrible scent. Parents downstairs didn't smell anything. So we decided to just wait it out until we heard a massive crash, like the floor almost shaking. So massive. We both had the instant, what the fuck, look at each other and asked if everything was okay. Parents surprised because they didn't hear a single thing. Now, this was a car crashing sound, so it was loud and it was like nearby thunder. After discussing with my sister for logical explanations and coming completely dry, both not the type to discount anything supernatural until 100% disproven, which pretty much nothing is. A-F-A-I-K. Interesting acronym. As far as I know. Okay, nice. Which pretty much is nothing as far as I know. We decided to just Google about accidents around that area. Stumbled upon a local news article about a guy about my age having an accident on that road. Ended up going over the edge and rolling down the hill. Car caught on fire and emergency services came too late. The guy passing away on the scene. Now, I know it sounds made up and like some scary campfire story, but I'd like to know if anybody else has had such experiences, and maybe for somebody who's a little more well-read than me having an explanation. Definitely, it's kind of slowed my driving since that little experience. Disturbing smell after S. In January, my son's dad committed suicide. In January, my son's dad committed suicide by gunshot wound in her bathroom. A team came out and cleared the blood up and pulled up the flooring and walls, and the thing I can't quite get over is the awful smell that was left in his bedroom. Backstory. We weren't in a relationship, but we were living together. He had his own room and I had mine. The house smelt absolutely fine. His room was always clean. Swept, mopped, incense, wall plug-ins. After the incident, my son and I left the home for about a month, only to return to accidentally move out of our belongings. My son's dad's room was basically empty, but the smell that lingered in there was awful. It smelled like a cup of chicken noodles were left out for months to rot. Mind you, this smell was never around whilst he was living, and I only noticed it after he passed. I often wanted to dry heave and gag smelling it. It was just heavy. It stank. Lingered in the house. Opening windows and doors didn't help. Well, I guess it did for a little bit, but soon the smell came back. Scrubbed the walls with cleaning solution, mopped the floors heavily, and still the smell lingered. Does this sound like a spirit? I haven't really gotten closure from his death, so I'm trying to understand if it's his spirit that may be lingering in the space, or whatever was attached to him. Since moving, I've not smelled the smell, so I'm so confused. Also, there was no food, drink, snacks, rotten anything left in the space. No other part of the home smelled like that but there. Curious on what exactly that was. I'm new to a lot of this. Paranormal activity in my new house. Ghost cats and shadow people. I know this will sound crazy without any evidence, but let me explain. My parents used to mess around with Ouija boards all the time in university. They used to tell me stories that ghosts would come visit them in the night, all in black. They'd stand at the edge of their bed and just whisper to them. I never believed any of it until we moved house. The previous owner's husband passed away in the house along with 8 cats. The house is the oldest in town. It's got a lot of activity occurring, and the day I went around for a house tour, I saw 2 cats in the lounge. One white that darted across the room right to left, and another all in gray. I told the lady who owned the place, I love your cats. And she replied, What do you mean, cats? I only have one. That was the first time I couldn't explain what it was I was seeing. Thought it must have been a stray cat, but 2 nights later, I suddenly wake up at 6 a.m. to my cat meowing at the door to my bedroom. The door was open and it leans out to a long hallway. I honestly couldn't believe what I saw. A man floating. He was wearing welly boots. Looked see-through almost. Just staring at me for a moment and walking down the corridor and dissipating. I was so terrified I got the courage to run to my mom upstairs. And I can't lie, I hid under the covers with all the lights on in the house until the sun came up. Turns out the person I saw was the husband who passed away in the house. He used to walk around the garden wearing welly boots. The previous lady who owned the house also showed me her cat photos. Turned out the one I saw had just passed away a couple of weeks before we arrived. We had a medium come in to bless the house, and that was after my grandpa passed. I was away at university, so he used my bedroom as he was ill. My brother and my grandpa claimed before he died, a woman in all black and a man at the end of the bed having a conversation about the house. My brother heard a voice of a woman, so it was bizarre. But what gets even more disturbing is that I found out my bed frame in the room was for the same that the man passed away in. Even after blessing the house, my cat keeps getting up and meowing at the hallway. I'm only posting this now because I was home alone with my cat, and sort of heard a distinct loud demonic meow coming from in front of me when my cat was asleep in the other room. Also at night, I can hear someone shuffling items and running up and down hallways downstairs and upstairs between rooms. If I can get any evidence of stuff moving or photos, I'll try. My childhood home was haunted. In the 90s, somebody OD'd in what would become my room. Never left. My family moved into the house in 2004 when I was 7. Growing up, before I knew the story, I would get sleep paralysis. But my quote-unquote demon was a man curled up to my closet, rocking back and forth. My closet was wide and had no doors, so he was pretty easy to see. This would happen on almost a nightly basis for years, and there's certain points in my life where it would get worse. I tried therapy, medication, everything that I could, but it never completely stopped. There were periods of time where it was less frequent, but he was always there. In high school, I fell in with the wrong people, starting using substances myself. After a little while, things started escalating. Instead of rocking back and forth, he'd be looking at me. I could feel terror coming from him, like I was feeling his last moments, like he was showing me what I had to look forward to if I didn't fix myself. Sometimes he'd be standing or even closer, but never really felt like he was someone to be afraid of, and more felt like the fear I was feeling wasn't my own, and it was his. It wasn't until I was an adult that I talked to my grandma, who lived across the street from the house, about my experiences. She told me about Peter. He was the kind of guy who would give you the shirt off his back even if it was the last thing he owned. How protective he was over the people in his life. He sounded like an amazing man, and knowing he had such demons that got him killed was heartbreaking. This story from my grandma was part of what convinced me to get clean. In the years leading up to me moving out of that house, things got more infrequent, but they never really stopped completely. I even had a partner tell me they swore they saw a shadow in my closet in the middle of the night. Now that I'm out of that house, I can't help but feel like his change in mannerisms during the period of my life when I was using was sort of him doing what he could to protect me. I miss him a lot. Even in the darkest times of my life, it was nice to know that there was somebody watching over me, making sure I knew to quit being an idiot. It was not a dream. Before I start, I'd like everybody to know that I do believe in ghosts and paranormal, and this event made sure I did. This event took place around 2 or 3 years ago. During vacation periods, I used to sleep alone in the hall, or the living room as many call it. Very different than a hall. While my sister, mother, and father slept in one room and my grandparents in the other. Back then, I didn't have a phone with me, so I used to watch these cooking videos on our common iPad, which used to make me comfortable enough to sleep. Just like any other day, I completed watching a video and drifted off to sleep. But then I had this uneasy feeling of someone watching me. didn't think much of it, got up and lit a small warm light in the corner of the hall and went back to bed. Then I heard it, the running footsteps of someone from my grandparents' room through the hallway, which stopped right where the hallway begins. I was shaken, but I wanted to know what the fuck it was, so I got up, slid open the curtains between the kitchen and the hall, and looked into the hallway for I don't even know what for. But then I remembered that somewhere on the internet I read that you cannot see the time when you're in dreams, so I had to make sure it's not a dream. I slowly turned my face around to see the time of the clock, which is right underneath the dim light. It was sharp 3 o'clock a.m. I'm not educated about paranormal, but I'm pretty sure it's called something like the Devil's Hour. I've seen too many horror movies to not make the mistake of investigating when I'm alone, and already a bit freaked out. So I took my mattress and dragged it into my parents' bedroom and slept there that night. Staring at the ceiling for 30 minutes. That was as everything that happened, and it was very real, and it was scary hearing running footsteps of somebody approaching you, but stop right before they reach you. I fast forward to 2 years later, and just so everybody knows, my father does not even in the slightest believe in the paranormal, so the events which followed are truly haunting. Scrolling on my phone for a while, now I had one at this point, I was tired enough to drift off to sleep, and it was already around 1 a.m. I'm a light sleeper, and even a small noise will wake me up, so around 2:30 a.m., heard my father barge open his bedroom door and run frantically to me. I got up the moment I heard the door open. I asked, "What happened, Baba?" And you won't believe what he said next. "Beta, why are you running in the hallway at this time, and why did you scream so loud?" I kid you not when I say my heart skipped a beat, and I said, "Baba, it wasn't me, I was sleeping." He was just as confused, but never talked about it again. And that is my story, folks. I've told you this, all my close friends, and still a bit scared to this day.